Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. We are from the group representing the topic of the concept of happiness in al-Ghazali Sufism. Before that, I would like to introduce our group member. Firstly, Naura Safira Salsabila, Nur Fatim Fatiha binti Muhammad Azmi, Nur Salihah binti Muhammad Safawi, and myself is Nur Atira Damia binti Suhaimi. So, what's the content we will be present in this topic? Firstly is the introduction. Secondly, historical background of al-Ghazali. Third, happiness according to al-Ghazali. And lastly, the relationship between the creator and the creature. And the last is conclusion. So without further ado, I would like to go to the introduction. So the introduction, I just want to brief. One of al-Ghazali nickname is the Proof of Islam, and he is a called that known one because of the sincerity of his writings, but because of the quality of the life he lived. He was appointed professor of theology at the University of Baghdad at the tender age of 33. But for the next 5 years, he was gripped in a spiritual crisis, trying to find a rational foundation for Islam's basic principles as outlined in the Quran. And then, he finally concluded that there was no rational way to refute skeptical doubt, but that there was another way to discover truth, and one hinted at by the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the sage within the Sufi tradition, the mystical side of Islam. And lastly, this way was that of immediate experience and inward discovery that depend not on logic but on intuition and imagination. The prophets of all times are the ones who have experienced this reality based on transforming themselves away from a self-centered to a God-centered existence. I think that's all for the introduction, because after this the other group member will explain more who is al-Ghazali and what the happiness according to al-Ghazali. So I think I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Nur Salihah binti Muhammad Safawi. Before we proceed to the main topic, which is the concept of happiness in al-Ghazali's Sufism, I will talk about historical background of al-Ghazali first. Al-Ghazali's biography. His full name was Abu Hamid Muhammad bin Muhammad al-Tusi al-Ghazali. He was born in 1058 at Tus, near the modern Masdar in Khurasan, which nowadays called Iran. Al-Ghazali is one of the greatest Islamic jurists, philosophers, theologians, and mystical thinkers. He belongs to the Shafi'i school of Islamic jurisprudence and to the Ash'ariyat school of theology. He also called as the Proof of Islam, Al-Hujjah al-Islam, the Ornament of Faith, Zain ad-Din, and a reformist, Al-Mujaddid. He learned various branches of traditional Islamic religious sciences in his hometown of Tus, Gurkhan, and Nishapur in the northern part of Iran. He was involved in Sufi practices from an early age. He was engaged in writing Sufi practices and teaching his disciples until his death. He was died in December 18, 1111 at Tus. Next, al-Ghazali's work. Al-Ghazali likewise assumed as important role in spreading Sufism and Sharia. He was the first to consolidate the ideas of Sufism into Sharia laws, and the first to give a formal depiction of Sufism in his work. Al-Ghazali tried to revive the entire structure of the religious sciences on the basis of Sufism. He says, due to his realization that there was no way to certain knowledge or the conviction of revelatory truth except through Sufism. During his life, he authored over 70 books on science, Islamic reasoning, and Sufism. These are major works al-Ghazali's in Tasawwuf. The greatest work of him is the revival of the religious sciences, Ihya Ulumuddin, which ran 6,000 pages and 4 volumes. Followed by The Alchemy of Happiness, Kimia Saadat, that the book that we are focused on, and Deliverance from Error Al-Mukid Min Al-Dalal, The Beginning of Guidance, Bidayat Al-Hidayah, The Creation of Action, Mizanul Amal, and The Path of the Worshippers, Minhaj Al-Abidin. That's all from me. Thank you for listening. I will pass to my friends.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. My name is Nawara Safira Salsabila Zain. I would like to present about the concept of happiness according to Abu Hamid al-Ghazali. And the next is, what is the meaning of happiness? Al-Ghazali's concept of happiness is written completely in his book entitled Kimia Saadah, or we can say in English, Alchemy of Happiness. Kimia means to change ordinary metals into gold, and Saadah means eternal happiness. And what Al-Ghazali meant here, that people can reach the highest level of happiness if they can purify their souls or spirit from any lust and sins. And the purification of souls can bring to the true happiness, which is eternal. Therefore, Al-Ghazali highlighted here that happiness is turning away from the world to Allah, which leads people to the everlasting happiness. And according to Al-Ghazali, the spiritual alchemy can be found only in the hearts of the prophets. So when Allah said in Al-Quran, فَكَشَفْنَا عَنْكَ غِطَاءَكَ فَبَصَرُكَ الْيَوْمَ حَدِيدٌ, the meaning is, and we have removed from you your cover, so your sight this day is sharp. Allah has sent to us 124,000 prophets to spread the formula of spiritual alchemy.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum. My name is Nur Fatiha, and I'm going to continue with the relationship between the creator and the creatures. So according to Al-Ghazali, happiness can be attained through the knowledge of self, the knowledge of God, and the knowledge of the world and the hereafter. So the knowledge of self. The key to knowing God is from the contemplation of the human body, of the oneself. So the external knowledge, such as the shape of the face, limbs, and knowledge of physical character, will not bring oneself to know God. The question should be asked by man is, who am I and where do I come from? Or where am I going? What is the purpose of my arrival and stopover in this world? Also, where can the true happiness be found? Okay, so the steps to get to know oneself is by realizing that the self is made up of the outer form, the body, and the inner, the heart or the soul, in which the soul will control all actions and use the body as the tool. Okay, and man needs to take care of his soul and also develop his body. And according to Al-Ghazali, the soul will be preserved when there is knowledge and love of God. On the other hand, the soul will be destroyed if one is absorbed in the love of something other than God. And the rational soul inside man has knowledge and strength, which make them as superior over other beings, okay, in which they master art and various of knowledge. So every faculty in man loves everything for which it was created. For example, the orgasm like to satisfy lustful desires, anger like revenge, I love the beautiful scenery, ears love the melodious voice, and the soul love and lead to the truth. So the soul will collapse if lust and anger control a person. And moral discipline is needed in order to purify the heart from lust, anger, and bodily desires, and also to concentrate his thought on God and able to reflect the divine light. Okay, so the human soul has the power to regulate all the limbs up to the body of others also, when it has reached a higher level of strength. And in fact, every human being has witnessed God as God. Okay, but it is the heart, the human heart, which is like a mirror that has been covered with rust and dirt so that it cannot reflect a clean image. And by exploring themselves, human will realize that their existence, as the best and most superior being that God created, but also with limitation, which lead them to know God more. And then the knowledge of God. So the occurrence of human beings from a drop of semen with an intellect, head, and so on, shows that no matter how perfect the human is, he could not even create a single strand of their hair. And its occurrence, both in terms of nature and soul, is also a reflection of the power, wisdom, and the love of God, which is immeasurable because it is beyond the capacity of human cognition. And it is God who organized the universe like humans, planets, and so on, while it is the soul that that God give, that God grant us, in which organize the whole body and limbs fairly. And the knowledge of God shouldn't be theoretically only, but it should be in practical, in which man should be surrendered and worship. Okay, so love is the seed of happiness, and it is also shown through worship and remembrance as a sign of concern and restraint of lust. And man shouldn't be uh, is not the best judge of themselves and their life. So it is necessary to have the God's uh, revelation to guide them. So if they violate the limitation, he is considered to persecuting or oppressing himself. Okay, so next, the knowledge of the world and the hereafter. So humans should realize that this world is just a stopover on the human journey to another place, to the next world, which is the hereafter. And this world is where the human seeks supplies for themselves. And men should use the intellect and whatever that Allah, God has granted them, to know more about God and the world, about the creatures. And then how man views of his God, of the world, will determine about his destiny in the future. And humans also currently face social problems because of what? Because of the bad attitudes inside them, such as hatred, envy, jealousy, and others. Also, when they forget the basic needs of their body, such as the clothes, food, and shelter. So humans are preoccupied with the world that deceives human beings, and they're willing to spend a lot of energy just for the sake of the world. And however, there are still a few good world things, and getting closer to God, that should be given a priority, such as the knowledge and good actions, or even the marriage, as long as they are in line with the Sharia. So human actions will be judged by God later on, and they will be placed either in heaven or hell later on, based on the mercy of God. And yeah, according to their actions also during their lives in the world. So most people are blindly follow the opinions of others, and they are not interested to study more, in which the result is uh, they will not have a true belief of happiness or suffering of the soul in the hereafter. I think that's all. Thank you.
And the next is the spirituality of Sufism. Alchemy of Happiness also discussed about the power of man's spirit, because the spirit of man is eternal and spirit of man is created to receive the truth, and the spiritual truth can be reached only by the balanced morality, which means the spirit have to be purified from any bad feelings, and this will bring people to the knowledge of God. Man is constituent of two dimensions. The first is outer or lahir, and the second one is inner or batin, as he consists of the spirit and the body. The spirit is the instructor of the body, but it does not mean the body is useless, because the perfect soul or spirit will bring to the perfect action of the body. Therefore, according to al-Ghazali, the duty of man is taking care of body and soul or spirit, because the spirit is eternal. Therefore, he who purifies the soul will realize the truth, wisdom, power, and love of God. Like what I mentioned before, that the spirit is eternal, so it has to be invisible and indivisible. Therefore, Imam Ghazali cited what Rasulullah SAW said in the hadith: God created man in his own likeness, because spirit of man cannot be destroyed even though the body is destroyed. The next one is the spirituality in music and dancing. There are some opinions and disputes among the theologians on music and dancing. According to Sufis, music or dancing can bring them to the greater love of God. They can reach the ecstasis and spiritual vision by it. And however, someone cannot take part in this mystical music or dancing without any permission from the peer or murshid. People cannot easily saying that music or dancing is haram, because we have to see on the purpose or the main purpose of the music or dancing itself. In reality, many of Sufis can reach the ecstasis because of dancing and music. And here, I cite what Imam Ghazali wrote in his book, Alchemy of Happiness, that said, the Sufi can then become so keenly aware of his relationship to the spiritual world that he loses all consciousness of this world and often falls down senseless. Love is defined by Imam Ghazali as something that always makes us happy, and hence we love everything that makes us happy based on our senses, such as our feeling, our sight, our smell, our hearing, and etc. And man can reach the perfection if he loves God wholeheartedly. And why human can reach the perfection if he loves God wholeheartedly? There are some factors of loving Allah. First, a man should love himself, and who loves himself will bring to the love of Allah as the only creator. So the second is, a man loves his supporters, and Allah is the only loyal supporter of man. And the third is, a contemplation of the attribute of Allah will lead to the love of Allah. And fourth, the affinity between man and God. So everything that happens with the human will bring to the true love, which is loving God. And next is the vision of Allah. All Muslims believe that the highest level of happiness is the vision of Allah, because the main purpose of life is Allah. And people cannot reach the highest level of happiness unless they can see God. And whoever want to see God, or who want to meet and who want to know the vision of God, should love God wholeheartedly. And how do people know that they are truly loving Allah or not? So there are some signs of the love of Allah that must be passed by several tests to prove it. The first one is the test to not afraid of the death, because the main of the death is for the vision of Allah, for meeting with Allah. And the second is the test of sincerity on receiving God's will. That means people must be sincerely received all the destiny. The third one is always remember Allah. The people who always remember Allah, then can be defined that he loves Allah. And the fourth one is love Quran and Rasulullah. And who loves Quran will read and practice it. and who love Rasulullah will follow the Sunnah. And the fifth is strong willing to do uzlah or seclusion, means that people do seclusions for worshipping Allah. And it is related to the next point, which is the worship become easy. People usually feel difficult to do worship in the first time, but if they always do it, will become easy. And the last is love those who loves Allah and hate who hates Allah or disobey the law of Allah, which is Sharia. And based on those explanations, we can understand that the spiritual alchemy can be practiced to love Allah wholeheartedly, and who loves Allah wholeheartedly will reach the highest level of happiness.
Thank you for my friend for the explanation, and I think it's a new knowledge for me or an information about al-Ghazali in his book of Achievement of Happiness. Yeah, before this, as we know that al-Ghazali is very famous, right? So without further ado, let's go to the conclusion for this topic. So what I can conclude from this topic, in the Achievement of Happiness, al-Ghazali begins by writing that he who knows himself is truly happy. Self-knowledge consists in realizing that we have a heart or spirit which is absolutely perfect, but which has been covered with dust by the accumulation of passions derived from the body and its animal nature. Then, the essence of oneself is likened to a perfect mirror which, if polished, will reveal one's true divine nature. The key to this polishing is the elimination of selfish desires and the adoption of a contrary desire to do what is right in all aspects on one's life. In al-Ghazali writing that he aim of moral discipline is to purify the heart from the rust of the passion and resentment till, like a clear mirror, it reflects the light of God. And also, al-Ghazali emphasized that only a few people have attained this supreme happiness, which is the ecstasy of union with the divine. These people are the prophets, which appear in all times and places as messengers to remind mankind of their true purpose and their ultimate goal. Last but not least, al-Ghazali teach us the following about achieving true happiness. Firstly, happiness comes from self-knowledge. The knowledge that we have a heart or spirit that is originally perfect but has become obscured by passion and desire. Then, happiness depends on our faculties. If we exercise our higher faculties like reason, imagination, we will be happier than if we exercise our lower ones, more physical pleasure. And then, there are examples in history of truly happy people, and they were prophets. People who have attained a perfect union with ultimate reality, and then we become happy to the degree to which we can emulate that prophet. We are born with a knowing pain in the soul, which causes us to seek happiness. But most of us seek substitute pleasure deriving from the body, which cannot resolve a pain that is actually spiritual. I think that's all from me and for my group about the topic of happiness of al-Ghazali in Sufism. Thank you for hearing our presentation. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.